The truth about why Darth Vader never hunted Yoda after Order 66 reveals something unexpected about how the Empire actually worked. Drawing from both canon and legend sources, 5 key reasons explain why the most dangerous Jedi Master in the galaxy remained completely untouched while Vader spent decades as the Emperor's enforcer. First, the Empire never made Jedi hunting a priority, and Palpatine stated this position explicitly. In Legends continuity, specifically James Luceno's novel Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine made his view clear during conversations with Vader in the weeks following Order 66. The Emperor communicated to his apprentice that the Jedi meant nothing to the Empire. Surviving Jedi like Yoda and Obi-Wan were not exceptions to any rule. Palpatine was certain that dozens of Jedi escaped with their lives, and Vader would eventually have chances to eliminate many of them during his missions. However, the critical point was that their order had been crushed. Palpatine viewed the survivors hiding on remote worlds as having humbled themselves before the Sith. He wanted them to stay hidden, seeing their exile as ongoing punishment for 1,000 years of arrogance. This represented strategic contempt rather than mercy or oversight. While scattered Jedi hid across the galaxy, the Empire's true focus revealed something far more ambitious. The novel reveals what actually occupied the Empire's attention: controlling the Senate, suppressing political dissent, building the Imperial military, and constructing the Death Star in complete secrecy. The Empire faced too few battle groups to deploy everywhere: rogue paramilitary groups using abandoned separatist weapons and construction projects falling behind schedule. Against this backdrop, the scattered Jedi barely registered as a concern. The Emperor's orders to Vader regarding the Jedi were explicitly reactive rather than proactive. Palpatine instructed him that he could destroy any Jedi he came across during the course of his missions. The key distinction was that this phrase meant coming across them by chance. Jedi hunting was opportunistic, something to do if the situation presented itself, rather than a systematic campaign. By the novel's end, when Palpatine considered threats that needed to be rooted out, Jedi were not even mentioned. The assessment was clear: the Jedi were incidental to Vader's actual purpose. In canon continuity, the Marvel comic series Darth Vader: Dark Lord of the Sith shows the same pattern. Palpatine managed targets strategically, distinguishing between Jedi who mattered and those who did not. Even weak Jedi could be important if they possessed valuable knowledge. However, the general population of survivors scattered across the galaxy was not worth the organized hunt. Series like Star Wars Rebels demonstrates that the Empire prioritized threats based on immediate danger. A rogue Jedi like Canon Jarrus recruiting survivors demanded attention, while a hidden Jedi Master in deep exile did not. What becomes clear across both continuities is that the Empire had far bigger concerns. Building the Death Star required massive labor, political control demanded constant attention, and the military needed expansion and modernization. With this in mind, finding Yoda would have meant diverting resources from these critical objectives to search potentially thousands of worlds for someone who had already removed himself from relevance. Second, Vader's actual role in the Empire was a political enforcer rather than a Jedi hunter, and his missions prove this beyond question. In the Legends continuity, Darth Vader's official position was Emperor's emissary. His function was liaison with regional governors and the Imperial Navy. The novel describes his role precisely. He wielded not real power, but merely the execution of power. He was not the sword master so much as the weapon itself. The missions Vader undertook in the first weeks and months after Order 66 demonstrate this clearly. His first major assignment sent him to Murkana with explicit orders to punish clone troopers who had disobeyed Order 66. The Emperor made his priorities clear when he informed Vader that he was not worried about the Jedi, but wanted those clone troopers punished. The objective was disciplining the military rather than hunting Force users. When Vader encountered Jedi survivors during this mission, including Masters Roan Shrine and Bolt Shatak, the encounters were completely accidental. His later assignments sent him to Alderaan to retrieve Senator Thang Zar, a political dissident who had fled Coruscant after questioning by Internal Security Bureau officers. The objective involved political intimidation, specifically demonstrating consequences for senators who challenged Palpatine's authority. Bail Organa had granted Tsar refuge at the royal palace, unaware that Imperial forces had been instructed to keep the senator on Coruscant. When Vader arrived with his team of stormtroopers, the situation escalated quickly. Smugglers hired by the late crime boss Cash Garrelin were attempting to retrieve Tsar from the palace grounds. During the operation, Shrine appeared, helping the senator escape while Vader confronted palace security forces, and massive crowds of protesters gathered outside. The mission ended in calculated action that revealed Vader's true priorities. Vader hurled his ignited lightsaber through the air above the crowd, the crimson blade spinning in a deadly arc. The weapon struck Fang Tsar first, tearing a deep wound across his upper chest and nearly taking his head. The blade continued its path, striking Shrine's mother, Jula, across the back before returning to Vader's hand. Tsar passed away on the landing platform, while Jula survived but was gravely wounded. The encounter proved once again that meeting Jedi during missions happened by accident rather than by design. Vader's focus remained on the political target throughout. Shrine's intervention was unexpected, and Vader did not attempt to pursue the Jedi afterward. The third major operation, the invasion of Kashyyyk, revealed the Empire's true priorities and the merciless efficiency of its methods. The primary objective had nothing to do with Jedi at all. Moff Wilhuf Tarkin approached Vader with a proposition that would benefit both of them. Tarkin supervised construction of the Emperor's secret weapon, a battle station already far behind schedule. The project faced engineering problems, contractor delays, and most critically, a severe shortage of skilled workers. The sharp-featured Moff explained his plan clearly. Vader's hunt for Jedi could serve a larger purpose. If he led an operation to capture insurgent Jedi, and if those Jedi happened to be harbored by Wookiees, then the Wookiees could be exposed as rebels against the Empire. Vader grasped the strategy immediately. He could eliminate scattered Jedi while also providing Tarkin with exactly what the secret project needed. When intelligence detected Jedi survivors on Kashyyyk, Imperial forces tracked their movements but intentionally allowed their transport through checkpoint cordons. Their presence provided perfect justification for what came next. The invasion proceeded with overwhelming force. Orbital bombardment preceded massive ground assaults. Victory-class Star Destroyers descended from orbit while gunships and troop carriers swept through the forests. The operation successfully captured 200,000 Wookiees who were placed in containment camps on the Wawat Archipelago. Tarkin later reported the results to the Emperor, confirming he would accommodate twice that number if needed. Palpatine granted permission to transport the slaves to the weapon, then emphasized the need for absolute secrecy. Tarkin was ordered to inform the regional governor of activities on Kashyyyk, but to make no mention of the Wookiees' final destination. All three operations proved that meeting the Jedi was either by accident or used as a cover for other Imperial objectives. Vader was deployed as an instrument of Imperial political and military power rather than as a specialized Jedi hunter. When he did encounter Jedi during these missions, his performance revealed another problem. He was not particularly effective against skilled opponents. This leads us to the third reason. Vader was physically and psychologically incapable of confronting someone as powerful as Yoda. In the Legends continuity, Vader's new body created severe limitations. The suit designed by Palpatine restricted his movement and caused constant pain. During his early missions, Vader questioned whether losing his limbs meant losing strength in the Force as well. His fighting style became clumsy and stiff compared to his former abilities. He defeated Jedi through brute strength and size rather than skill or finesse. During his duel with Bol Chetak on Morkana, an undistinguished Jedi Knight, Vader's fighting style revealed both his limitations and his overwhelming advantages. His technique was clumsy compared to what he had been capable of as Anakin Skywalker. His strikes were mostly vertical, lacking the grace and variety he had once displayed. He appeared to lack a style of his own, executing moves stiffly rather than with the fluid precision of a true master. However, Vader compensated for poor technique with raw power. He stood a full head taller than Chetak and used incredible strength to beat her into submission. The Zabrak Jedi was all grace and speed, working her way inside his guard with broad circular movements. Her lightsaber seemed an extension of her body, yet Vader's sheer power overwhelmed her defensive advantages. He did not need a refined technique when he could simply hammer through her guard with brute force. Chittak managed to inflict a wound to his forearm, but the injury revealed the extent of Vader's transformation. Instead of blood, sparks and smoke fountained from the injury. The strike confirmed what she had suspected. Much of Vader was machine rather than flesh. The revelation did not save her. With a final flick of his blade, Vader defeated her. The fight demonstrated that Vader, in his new form, defeated Jedi through size, strength, and determination, rather than skill or finesse. Against truly powerful opponents, particularly masters of Yoda's caliber, these advantages would prove insufficient. Palpatine himself acknowledged this reality, remarking that Vader should imagine what Yoda might have done to him. Yoda had confronted Palpatine in the Senate chamber and forced the Emperor to fight seriously. Vader, damaged and diminished, stood no chance against the Jedi Master. However, the physical limitations were not the most important barrier. The novel reveals that Vader's real weaknesses were psychological rather than physical. He was consumed by grief, anger, and self-pity during this period. He questioned his place in the New Order, feeling like Palpatine's servant rather than a true Sith Lord. The text describes him as distracted and unstable, barely holding himself together. The psychological barrier went deeper than simple emotional turmoil. Qui-Gon Jinn, speaking to Obi-Wan as a Force ghost, explained that the core of Anakin that resides in Vader understands that Tatooine is the source of nearly everything causing him pain. Vader would never set foot on Tatooine out of fear of reawakening Anakin. This principle applies to more than just one planet. Confronting Yoda, the living embodiment of everything the Jedi Order represented, would force the same unbearable confrontation. The novel makes clear that some residue of Anakin continued to plague Vader, like pain from a phantom limb. Hunting down Yoda would risk the psychological stability Vader desperately needed to function in his new role. By the novel's conclusion, Vader had achieved a breakthrough transformation after defeating Shrine. The text describes it as crossing some invisible threshold to a new world. However, his new priority was not hunting Jedi. Instead, he looked forward to a time when he could find an apprentice of his own, and together with that one, topple Darth Sidious from his throne. His actual focus was on eventually overthrowing his master. In this context, scattered Jedi became irrelevant. They were no different from others who would interfere with his and Sidious's realm. In canon continuity, the comics Darth Vader show Palpatine establishing control over his apprentice from the very first day. Immediately after learning that Padme had passed away, Vader raged at his master. Palpatine's response involved both physical demonstration and explicit threat. He tormented Vader with Force lightning, demanding that he defend himself while Vader had no lightsaber. When Vader instinctively reached out with the Force, Palpatine warned him that if he touched the Emperor with the Force again, he would finish what Kenobi could not. This established how their relationship would function from that point forward. The suit's design kept Vader vulnerable, meaning Palpatine could hurt him whenever he wanted, and the Emperor made this threat perfectly clear. Vader learned immediately that disobedience meant consequences. The Emperor also addressed Vader's desire for revenge. Reading his apprentice's thoughts, Palpatine instructed him to set such feelings aside because personal revenge mattered less than the Empire's needs. From day one, Vader could not pursue targets based on his own desires. He could only act on Imperial priorities as defined by his master. Fourth, a sophisticated control system prevented Vader from taking any independent action, including hunting Yoda. The most revealing evidence about this control system comes from Legends continuity, specifically Sean Stewart's novel Yoda: Dark Rendezvous, which shows how Emperor Palpatine controlled his apprentices. The book reveals a system designed to prevent exactly the kind of independent action that hunting Yoda would represent. The novel demonstrates this through Count Dooku's experience on Vajun. Dooku had installed a red button on his desk connected to a missile in orbit, programmed to destroy his own location. He called it his last card to play. When Palpatine called, Dooku's hand shook as he touched it. When the Emperor's presence grew more threatening, sweat ran freely down the Count's face. Even with Yoda at his mercy during their confrontation on Vajun, Dooku could not act freely because he was paralyzed by fear of his master discovering any unauthorized action. The novel also reveals conversations between Ventress and Dooku that expose the dangers of the Sith apprentice system. Ventress warned the Count directly about the Emperor's intentions, suggesting that Palpatine would use him up. She questioned what would happen when Dooku became the most dangerous being left standing, implying that success itself became dangerous under Palpatine's rule. The novel makes clear through these exchanges that Sith apprentices operated under constant threat, unable to take independent action without risking their master's wrath. The novel further demonstrates how Palpatine used Yoda's disappearance for political gain. When news reports claimed Yoda was gone after Ventress destroyed his decoy ship, Mace Windu asked Palpatine to correct the record. The Chancellor refused, citing bureaucratic procedures and the need for verification. Meanwhile, Senator Orn Free Taa used Yoda's apparent fate to call for massive new security forces answering directly to the Chancellor's office. Padme Amidala recognized what was happening. Control over Republic security was shifting from the professional Jedi Order to the emotional, politicized Senate. Palpatine gained emergency powers directly because of Yoda's absence. The novel's ending shows what happened to apprentices in this system. Count Dooku ended up alone on a distant planet, despite all his power and success. The text repeats the word like a mantra. Despite everything he had achieved, the Count was alone. This was the fate of Sith apprentices under Palpatine's control. They might gain power and win battles, but they remained isolated, manipulated, and ultimately disposable. Vader remembered eliminating Dooku at Palpatine's command, making him realize that even total obedience and success led to betrayal when the apprentice was no longer needed. The novel also includes a vision where Dooku glimpses what would happen if Yoda ever turned to the dark side. During their confrontation, holomonitors cast strange shadows across Yoda's face. In that moment, Yoda appeared identical to Darth Sidious. The vision revealed something specific and horrifying. Yoda possessed 9 centuries of Force mastery. No Sith Lord, not even Sidious, had lived long enough to accumulate that knowledge and skill. If all that power served darkness instead of light, it would create a being beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. The vision terrified Dooku completely. In a flash, he understood how foolish his plan was. If Yoda walked that path, Sidious himself would be destroyed. In canon continuity, the comics show the same control system through Vader's early experiences. The series Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith shows Palpatine managing Jedi targets strategically rather than eliminating them without strategy. When discussing the elderly Jedi archivist Jocasta Nu, Palpatine explained that despite her being weak in the Force and barely competent with a lightsaber, she could end everything they were trying to do because of her knowledge. Palpatine's orders regarding Jocasta revealed his management philosophy. He informed Vader that he sensed his eagerness and that the idea of fighting another Jedi called to him. However, Vader needed to set these desires aside. This was not a one-time instruction. The comics show Palpatine giving this command repeatedly. When Vader failed the mission and Jocasta passed away instead of being captured alive, Palpatine's response was ominous. He simply acknowledged the failure as regrettable, then demanded that Vader return immediately to provide a full report. The Emperor wanted to hear the story in complete detail. This was an interrogation masked as a debriefing. Vader had to lie about the circumstances, claiming Jocasta was careless during an escape attempt. Even then, the implied threat hung over the conversation. Failure had consequences, even when the failure was accidental. The comics also show Palpatine explaining his philosophy of emotional control directly to Vader. He admits that without the Jedi, Vader had almost no worthy opponents left. This emptiness could become a problem. Palpatine admitted he felt the same emotions, hate and contempt for lesser beings. These emotions opened doors to dark side power. However, he offered a warning about falling too deep. When that happened, the relationship turned. The Sith became a tool, and the emotions became the masters. Palpatine did not want Vader attacking targets based purely on emotion. He wanted Vader's actions to focus on strategic objectives. Fifth, Yoda held special value to Palpatine, making hunting him a strategic mistake. Both continuities show that the ancient Jedi Master was more useful alive and hidden than gone and martyred. In Legends, Palpatine used Yoda's status as a control mechanism for apprentices, a justification for emergency powers, and insurance against apprentice rebellion. The most powerful Jedi Master alive could be discovered and deployed if Vader ever rebelled. Having Yoda's status unknown served the Empire better than confirming his fate. In canon, the pattern of strategic Jedi management shows that Palpatine distinguished between Jedi based on their value. Some Jedi needed to be captured alive for information, others could be eliminated on sight, and some were not worth pursuing at all. Yoda fell into the category of enemies more useful left alone. His self-imposed exile had already neutralized his influence and wisdom. Finding him would require massive resource investment for minimal return. His presence on an unknown world posed no active threat to Imperial operations. The complete answer reveals that neither the Empire nor Vader himself had any reason to hunt Yoda. Imperial policy treated scattered Jedi as a low priority because their order was already crushed. Vader's role as political enforcer rather than Jedi hunter, with his missions focused on punishing disobedient troops, intimidating senators, and securing labor for the Death Star. The control system made independent action impossible because Palpatine maintained strict control over his apprentices through fear and strategic manipulation. Yoda alive served the Emperor's purposes better than gone, functioning as a tool for testing apprentices, justification for emergency powers, and insurance against rebellion. Vader's damaged body and tortured mind made confronting Yoda physically impossible and psychologically unbearable. The question assumes hunting Yoda was natural or expected, but the evidence shows it was neither. Vader never hunted Yoda for the same reason he never attacked Coruscant or challenged the Emperor directly during this period. It violated every rule of his existence as a Sith apprentice and would have ended in his destruction. The real story is not about a hunt that failed to happen. It is about an empire so completely victorious that hunting its enemies became unnecessary. Yoda's forced exile was the consequence of larger failures. The next video analyzes why Yoda failed as a Jedi Master, explaining how the Order's greatest leader made the mistakes that enabled Palpatine's rise and left the Jedi scattered across the galaxy.